lovely folks who registered. So check your emails for that. Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get this kicked off. Thank you all for joining us today. We're so excited to start hosting these webinars. We are planning on this being a monthly event, so please keep track of your emails and we'll have more invites for upcoming webinars as they become available. Great. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Kate Ashai. I am one of the founders of Psyche Digital. Our other founder is online. That's Kelsey Parks. And we have both been in the marketing space for quite a while. My background, I was in sales and marketing for the last 15 years, both on the corporate and the agency side, wearing just about every hat imaginable. Kelsey also spent a lot of time in the startup and business space. Her expertise is in building systems and running operations for startups and growing organizations. We came together to build Psyche Digital. We are entering our 5th year of business, and we specialize in supporting VC-backed and growth stage startups with branding, website design, and marketing strategy execution. But anyways, enough about us. We are so excited to have you all here today. Let's hop in to what we're going to be talking about. If my slide will change. There we go. So we're going to be talking about a tactic that we use with our clients over and over and over again with great results. So we're going to start off talking about the case for this tactic. It's called the authority system and how it solves one of sales' biggest challenges. Then, once we've talked about that, we're going to jump into how to craft the perfect interview and article. So who to talk to, how to capture the story, which is really foundational in making this tactic work. Then we're going to transition over into how we turn this into a content engine. So not just one piece that goes on your website and is never used again, but how do we make this into an engine that's going to fuel your marketing efforts for months and months to come. After that, we'll wrap it all up and open it up for questions. So feel free towards the end there to write down your questions and bring those up once we get to that question and answer section. So hopping right in, the case for the authority system. So the authority system is what we call this tactic that we're going to walk you through today. We also sometimes call it the expert interview strategy. So if you hear that, it's one and the same. It's one of our favorite tactics that we've used over and over and over with some really fantastic results. But why are we using this tactic? So when we are talking about startups and we're talking about growth stage organizations, most founders understand that they need visibility. They need to be seen to get clients in the door. But a lot of times these efforts don't really see a large return, and that's because they're fairly scattered and they're missing a couple of really important ingredients. Those ingredients are trust and authority. When we're talking about a buyer's journey and a buyer going through the process of learning about your company, from the start, they are wired to minimize risk. That means that they do this really fast mental shortcut where if they don't know you, they automatically assume you're untrustworthy. The other thing that we're seeing over and over and over again is that buyers are spending a lot of time self-educating themselves before they ever talk to a sales rep. So they're going to your website, they're going to your social media channels, they're checking to see if there's any news articles about you. They want to know who you are before they ever talk to you. And then in particular, if we're talking about B2B sales, there are multiple levels of approval. So it's not just getting one person's buy-in that you're a legitimate, great company with a great product. There's multiple levels of approval that need to be taken. So people need to talk to their CEO, their COO, their manager, all of these different groups before they can actually make a purchase. Some of the efforts that we see businesses try are things like paid ads. The problem with this is ads get you clicks, but they don't get you trust. If you pay for an ad, people click on that ad, they visit your website, they don't recognize or respect your brand. Once they click, they bounce, and you've wasted a large investment of money. Then there's the random social media posts. So people say, okay, I need to be visible. I'm going to post on social media. They do random memes. They share news from the industry. They have some updates about their company. The problem is most of the time these efforts are very inconsistent, and the posts that you put out there are low authority. They don't build meaningful visibility. They keep your feed alive, and it is important to have some consistency in that continuous churn of content, but those types of posts don't really move trust or authority forward. We also see a lot of people try to do generic brand blog posts. So I kind of call this the category of content no one remembers. People do posts about why our product is great or vague top 5 trend articles. The problem with this content is it's all about you and your industry, but it's not really about the audience's needs, and it doesn't really position you as a trusted authority. It just feels like noise. I've also seen a lot of early stage to growth stage businesses try to hop on the public relations train. They'll hire an expensive PR firm with the hope that press mentions are going to translate into large visibility. The problem with this effort is it is expensive. These PR agencies are very expensive, and without an existing brand presence or proof of the impact that you make, PR very rarely lands or sticks. It's expensive. It doesn't create that evergreen authority that a really good piece of content can. Then there's always the hustle harder mentality of cold outreach. I'm going to reach out to every email in my Rolodex. I'm going to build lists of different companies and reach out to all of their info at emails. I'm going to fill out their website contact forms, and someone is going to talk to me. The problem with cold outreach without really having any brand awareness is it feels really pushy and it often gets ignored. I don't know about you guys, but I get about 5 to 6 emails a day with the subject line quick question. I never open a single one. I dump it immediately in my spam folder, and I'm sure a lot of you do the same thing. It's fair. We don't want to do those spammy outward reaching emails. And finally, when we're talking about search engine optimization, this is a much broader strategy, and a lot of times it gets ignored. I actually love search engine optimization, but the problem with ignoring it is you become invisible when it really matters. So you focus all of your visibility efforts on paid or outbound outreach instead of building that long-term organic visibility that's required for search engine optimization. And the problem is when people do find you, it's not natural. It's because you've had to really push for it. And so when they're actually looking for solutions and they do get in contact with you, you're starting that conversation from ground zero. Nobody's heard of you. Nobody understands the authority or has the trust in your brand. And so it's really hard to make that conversion. So anyways, that was a lot of the negative. You can really sum that up with when you have visibility without trust, you're going to have more objections, you're going to have longer sales cycles, and then you're going to have fewer deals closed. And that's really the problem without having that authority and trust built in there. So how do we combat that? How do we start building that trust? How do we start building that authority? It's really important that we're not just doing visibility to be out there. I know everyone thinks like any press mention is good. Visibility is good no matter what form, but really what you want to do is be more strategic in the ways that you become visible. First, you want to get in the spotlight. You do want to be out there in front of people, but you want to make sure you're in the right places. You're on the right channels. You need to do some research about where your audience is. Where do they live? How do they like to interact? Where are they going to want to interact with you? Once you have that highlighted, then you want to start working on becoming a resource for your audience, not just pushing your products. You want to focus on delivering consistent value, authentic insights, help build that trust, get over that trust wall so that they want to talk to you. The emphasis with all of this is that you're really trying to create value and not just do a sales pitch. So you want to move away from really pushing your products, pushing sales, pushing that kind of thing, and instead figure out how you can foster meaningful conversations, act as a resource for your audience so you're providing that meaningful content. One rule that we give our clients on a regular basis is that only 25% of their content should be focused on sales. The other 75 should be focused on either delighting, educating, or interacting with their audience, and it needs to all be driven by what value can I offer them. When you build that value, you shorten that trust cycle. Now, building trust from the ground up does take a long time, and so that's why we introduced this authority system. It is a way to shorten that trust building cycle by using what's called the halo effect. So basically, you get to jump in line in terms of authority building by associating yourself with someone your audience already knows and trusts. You can read about the psychology of all of this behind in this book called Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. It's a fantastic book. It talks all about the halo effect. But the long and short of it is you are associating your brand, your company, with someone who has relevant experience and authority in the space. And through that, you are jumping ahead in that trust cycle. So this is our way for addressing that. This is our way for using the halo effect. How the system works, the authority system works, is you are going to identify an expert that has something valuable for your audience. This could be a thought leader, a client, even an employee with some really great knowledge that they have siloed away and haven't been sharing. Once you have identified that expert, you're going to conduct an interview with them. We recommend recording this so that you have it in video and you can refer back. From that interview, you're going to write a long form article, and then you're going to break that long form article into multiple content pieces. This could be social media, it could be email marketing. A lot of this depends on the channels that your audience likes to interact with. Once you have created all of those pieces, you're going to host it on your channels, social media, website, all of those places, and you're going to invite your expert to share it with their audience. What this does is it allows you to be visible with your expert's audience. So you get in front of them, in front of this new audience of people, and you're benefiting from the halo effect by building that trust through association. It's a fantastic tactic. It works really well. There are a lot of people that try to do similar things to this through blog writing and quoting other experts. The problem with just quoting an expert is all it does is show that you are up on industry trends, shows that you can read, and that's good. You do want to be up on the industry trends, but if you actually want to get that authority, that trust building in action, you need to do more. You need to host that expert and give them a platform for sharing their opinions and their knowledge. So in terms of what you're investing versus what you get out of this tactic, investment, you have to invest some time and some effort for planning. Scheduling interviews, it takes a little bit of time and some reaching out, maybe a little bit of discomfort. You need to invest in quality content. If you are not capable of writing a really good, really interesting article, you need to invest in a copywriter to do that for you. And you need to invest in a graphic designer or someone who can pull together the graphic elements you need for a social media post. It needs to be really high quality content. You need to consistently promote the article once you build it. Generally, these articles, if you just go and put it on your website, no one's going to interact with it. You need to build the article. You need to create the assets so that someone is willing to share it for you, your expert. You need to promote it regularly on your channels, your social media, your email marketing, all of those different things so that people go and visit that article, and then you'll start seeing that momentum growing. And you need to invest in a collaborative relationship with your expert. It's not just interview them and never talk to them again. You need to continue that conversation, figure out ways you can collaborate together so that they're really excited to work with you and continue to talk with you. In return, once you make this investment, and all marketing requires an investment, time or dollars, one way or the other, you're going to invest in your marketing. But in return, you're going to get some increased brand visibility, credibility, and trust. You're going to shorten that sales cycle because people will be building off of that authority. They trust you easier. They educate themselves through those articles. You're going to have a really valuable piece of content that lasts for months and years. Some of our clients that have been doing this for a really long time, they get to go back and reshare articles from 2 or 3 years ago. It's a fantastic engine that just keeps giving that way. And then, of course, you're going to build relationships with these experts that can only help your business moving forward. Okay, so that's a lot about why we like this system. Let's talk about the nitty-gritty, about how you actually go all the way through the process and create a really valuable piece of content. Okay, first, identifying the expert. This is a really, really important part, because if you get an expert that nobody's heard of, that doesn't have an audience, that maybe doesn't mesh with your brand values, the interview is going to flop. So what do we look at when we're looking for an expert? The first thing is relevance to your industry. Do they have something relevant to talk about that your audience is going to be interested in? We want to make sure that they have authority and credibility. If you pick a expert that nobody's heard of, it might work later in your business cycle if you already have a large audience, but if your goal is to grow your audience, grow your visibility, grow your authority, it's going to be harder with someone that doesn't already have an audience. Audience appeal. Is it someone your audience is going to like and enjoy being around? Do they have good visible social media? Is it someone that they're going to recognize when they hear your name or hear that expert's name? Are they available to talk to? I can't tell you how many times we've reached out to an expert and it's been hard to get them on the phone. If they do not have time to talk to you, it's not going to work. You're going to sit and stew on this interview. You're going to think about questions. You're going to do all of this prep work, and then they're never going to talk to you. So make sure it's someone who has time and is excited to talk to you. Make sure their brand values align with your brand values. If your company is all about saving the planet and theirs is all about profit and destroying rainforests, probably not a great fit, probably not the person you want to share on your platform. And then also think about collaboration potential. Is there an opportunity for you to collaborate on future marketing activities or business activities? You want to make sure that your expert is excited to be interviewed, well-connected, a good person for your ideal client to interact with, and it's someone who's really knowledgeable in their space. I will say, oh yeah, go ahead, Gels.
I was just going to chime in as well, just related to identifying your expert. When reaching out to experts, there's also the implicit value that they're going to receive by being part of this process. They'll be showcased in an article that's very high quality. There will be posts linking to them and their company. So it is like a win-win situation for them, and leading with that value can also help with that availability challenge that Kate mentioned a second ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Kelsey. I will say if someone is a little difficult on one of these points, like I wouldn't completely write them off, but try to make sure that they fit most of these bullets when you're identifying your expert. There are a few different kinds of experts that you could identify. I think the most obvious one when we're initially thinking about this tactic is an industry leader, someone who is somewhere in your space, in your market, that they're recognized as an expert. They have all of this experience that they can share. There's influence in your field. That is a great way to go out and grow your audience by getting in front of their audience. They should have a lot of contacts with your ideal customer. Another really great direction to go, though, if you don't have as many contacts in that space, one is clients. You can almost use this as a case study. They provide a really unique and firsthand perspective on how you do the things that you do, how it impacts your business. I will say, generally, when we're talking about clients, we try not to be too focused on just how you helped them. Try to get them to talk about their business and the things that they do. You can also talk to internal experts. I'm sure there are people on your team that have a wide breadth of knowledge that they could share that would be really helpful with your potential clients. Again, the thought with this one is make sure that they're helping you reach your marketing goals. If your goal is to grow your audience, make sure they have a broad personal audience that consists of people that might want your services or products. But internal experts can be a really great option too. Once you've identified your experts, and what I recommend doing is make it a list of anybody and everybody you know that might be a good fit for this. Start trying to book people. And I would try to book probably 2 or 3 people at a time, just to get the wheels turning on an interview. Sometimes scheduling can be the biggest lift in terms of executing the strategy. Okay, once you have your expert identified and you're starting to head towards that interview, you got to think about the questions you're going to ask. This interview and this foundational article are the key components of making the strategy work. So you want to really think through the questions you're asking. You want to encourage them to share in-depth, actionable knowledge. You want to make sure that the questions are asking for unique perspectives, things that people can't just Google and find the answer to. Some question styles that I like: start with open-ended questions. Anything that's just a yes or no is not going to give your copywriter or yourself much to work with in terms of crafting a story or an article. Make sure that when you are asking your questions that you are staying focused, but also flexible. It would be a mistake to miss an opportunity for a follow-up question because instead of listening to your expert, you are looking ahead at your next question. Make sure you're actively listening to them. A lot of times in interviews, they come up with a whole new direction that is really, really interesting. You know it would be valuable for your audience. You want to make sure to ask some follow-up questions. Focus on the how and the why of what they're doing, not just the what. We do want details on what they've done, especially if they're talking about how they got to where they are in their business or how they or what their solution is. You absolutely want to know what it is, but when you dive into how they do something or why they do something, it really will reveal their thought process, the reasons behind what they did, and that's going to be more valuable to your audience than just what they did. In terms of question themes, some questions I always like to hit on because it always provides valuable content. First, ask about real-world examples. People love hearing about a practical experience. I was faced with this problem and I did this thing and it worked in this way for this person. People love hearing about that. Ask for predictions and future insights. If this person is really an industry leader or really in the know about the space that you're trying to communicate with, they should have some really interesting predictions for where things are going. That's always a great way to get a conversation really rolling. And then it's hard, sometimes it can be a little challenging, but I do recommend trying to get a personal touch with your experts. Ask them a more reflective question at the end, and that can give an idea more about their values, their motivations, the things that really drive them as a person. And that humanizing touch can be what really brings the article to life, makes it more interesting than just I don't know, how-to of whatever their offer or service is. Okay, conducting the interview. At this point, I'm going to hand this over to Kelsey, I believe, and let her take it from here.
Yeah, so, all right, you've done the heavy lifting, you've gotten your expert interview booked, and you have your questions drafted. So what are some things to keep in mind as you are moving into actually hosting this expert in your ecosystem? So first and foremost, I want to emphasize the importance of checking your tech. We're going to provide a workbook at the end of this webinar that has a checklist. So I'm not going to go into it in detail here, but making sure that you're able to capture and replay and pull a transcript from the interview is a really important preliminary set of activities before talking to your expert. From there, once you have your booking date and time set, go ahead and create an agenda, outline your objectives. Knowing what you want out of the experience may help you to feel more confident and more driven. And it definitely, for me at least, quells my nerves a little bit. It's like, okay, we're here for a purpose. I'm not just taking someone's time. We're going to do something really cool together. Feel free to steer the conversation a bit. Have some themes in mind of where you would like to touch on in advance of chatting with the expert. Be an active listener. Try not to talk over. Try not to interrupt. In some cases, if you have a very chatty person and your time is limited, you may need to politely step in. But whenever they're speaking, demonstrate that interest. Feel free to make space. Like if they've said something that is interesting and you want to absorb that for a moment, please feel free to do that before jumping into the next question. You may come up with a follow-up question that deepens that moment and actually creates like a very unique nugget of the conversation. And if they say something that you don't really understand or is completely alien, feel free to ask for clarification. You know, you want to create something that your audiences can understand. It's okay to ask for clarification with the expert to get that clarity. And also then you get from the horse's mouth the way that they think about that thing and the way that they would describe it. And you can see the pro tip at the bottom of the slide. It is totally okay to send questions ahead of time. I saw your question in the chat, Shaheen. If you want, or if they want to see the questions ahead of time, depending on their personality, feel free to shoot it over. Sometimes it can help. On the other hand, sometimes going on the fly is also very fruitful. We've seen some amazing conversations that were not premeditated by the expert themselves, did not see the questions, and the outcome was fantastic. When we roll into writing the interview article, there are some things to keep in mind. So now you have your recording, you've had the conversation. Ideally, you have the transcript with the actual words that were spoken. You're sitting down to create this piece. So some considerations, you want to write for your audience, for humans, and also for search engines. Luckily, when it comes to search engines, what they really crave is order of information, orderliness, and sanity in terms of like headers, subheaders, bullet points. Humans also very much appreciate that, as you probably know if you've done any writing or reading of articles. And then you also want to make sure that the content is quite clear. So keeping in mind the reading level, search engines actually do perform better with reading levels that are more accessible to a wider audience. In some cases, we have audience types that are highly technical and in fact have a better response to content if it does utilize million-dollar words and long sentences with conjunctions and multiple complex sentence structures. And if that is the case, if you have a more academic audience, then I would say prioritize the humans over the search engines. But if your audience is all right without that splendor of the English language, then go ahead and seek out a more reasonable reading level. So focus on the clarity, not only for people, but also for search engines. One other thing that we have seen that we would advise against is kind of the classic Q&A, essentially dumping a transcript. That was a format made popular in the newspaper age. Now with digital formats, you have an opportunity to make a very compelling thematic article. So actually breaking down information inside the article around themes rather than dumping a transcript is something we recommend, and tying back to that theme throughout the article. If you focus on one key topic, it does help not only the writing process, but the impact of the article. So when you're looking at the conversation that you had, if you see something that stands out above the others in terms of a topic that kind of is a cornerstone to that conversation, try to leverage that as the cornerstone of your article as well. Another just couple of easy tips for SEO. You do kind of want this to be a long form article. So 2,000 words or more adds more SEO power. Luckily, with an hour or an hour and a half long conversation, you will have no difficulty in achieving that length. And that does also include headers, subheaders, and some of that organizing parts of the article to help people scan through, find sections that they're really interested in, and then do deeper reads on the sections that inspire them. Last but not least, it's very important to add some imagery or video inside of the article, and make sure that the descriptions of those videos and articles is part of that element in the published final article. So in your drafting period, you can actually just draft descriptions of images and then have someone bring those images, or even invite your expert to pass over images, screenshots of their products, or photography or elements that they can also help you provide. But making sure that it's not a 2,000 word block of text is really important, and keeps the reader interested throughout the piece. It also just really takes that 5% step further, which creates 100% better effect in the piece. After you complete your interview, there are some opportunities for ensuring that the content meets the standards of your expert, as well as nurturing that relationship with that individual that you are collaborating with. So send over the draft article for them to redline the heck out of. You want them to be really happy with it. That promotes their interest in sharing it further and wider, as well as reduces any potential conflicts, especially if they're part of a large organization that may have legal requirements around the information that's being shared. You just make sure that you're not endangering any of their important business activities as well. So that's a really important step. We never publish anything that is not fully approved by the person who is showcased in the piece. Let them know when it will be posted in advance. Provide assets to support sharing the article, whether that be social media posts, email copy that they can use in their newsletter or as personal emails to get the word out. Make it really easy for them to share it with their audiences. And then also, you can give them permission to take the article and post it on their website using a citation in the article and the HTML that references that it is a copy of the original piece posted on your website. That's a really strong way to get a backlink, which supports your SEO. And then also they get to drive traffic to their website, which is a major value add for them. So it's a win-win if they do have a blog and agree to post it on their website as well with the correct citation. One other not noted here, but something that we do a lot is actually send a gift and a handwritten thank you card after the fact. That's just a bonus extra step to really demonstrate how grateful you are for their time and their knowledge. So after having your conversation, after crafting this article, getting it approved, publishing it on your website, so now it lives there, how are you going to maximize your impact on this content? So one of the reasons that we love this tactic is it is a natural fit for an omni-channel, multi-content piece approach that continues to generate interest with your audience in many different ways. So if you're able to break down the article into multiple pieces, pulling top quotes, perhaps bulleting out the key takeaways, creating an FAQ from the content of the article, all of those things can be broken into social media posts. It can be added into your email newsletter. It can be leveraged in sales emails that are going out by your sales team as well. So thinking about those content pieces and actually taking the time to sit down and build those out and think about a schedule to enhance and amplify that visibility is really valuable. The article itself has this SEO power around it. For those of you who aren't familiar with some of the most important aspects of SEO, of course, there's tons of technical SEO tasks that you can do throughout your website and on your content to improve your search engine visibility. But more important than anything is actually having compelling content, which this absolutely qualifies as. Positioning you as an expert, credible, trustworthy, and also showing your authority in the space. That SEO value grows over time. So as the article lives on your website, receives references to it, receives more visits to it, it becomes more and more coveted by search engines and more likely to get cited and shown in search results. This is even more important with the advent of AI overview, where people are doing longer question type searches to get answers. If your article becomes part of that conversation, that's a surefire way to establish more visibility. The great other thing about this article and the surrounding content is it establishes trust not only the first time they see the article, but by the fifth time they hear a reference around it. It only actually establishes greater and greater authority the more they see a showcase of those unique conversations that you're fostering. And then the final thing, it is a unique and valuable resource for your audience, right? So you're able to repurpose and recycle this over time. If there are changes in the industry, you could certainly go back and revamp, create a time recently edited, get more feedback from that person. It's really a foundational piece that can grow and continue to add value over time to your audience, to that expert, and to your industry as a whole. So the article itself is the cornerstone of the rest of the content engine. So an engaging long form piece of content that creates wins in your SEO and provides relevant and high value information to your audience. That then can be pushed out via email marketing. We love email marketing for this because you can actually have excerpts of the article or bulleted lists. You have more attention from those who you have real estate in their email inboxes around. And you can also somewhat control the direction that they go in afterwards. So if you're sending them to the article, or if you are putting some kind of call to action around that conversation, in email marketing, it's easier to kind of craft that journey than it is on a long form piece of content. Also, we love email marketing for the data. So as many of you are aware who have done email marketing with us or are doing it on your own, you can actually see who opens it, who clicks on it, and that can help drive some of your nurturing decisions around how to have conversations with folks, especially if they showed a lot of interest in the article. On social media marketing, this is a really fun and creative place that you can share aspects of the article, key takeaways, the question and answer format. And you'll want to approach this graphically, or if the video quality was good from your interview, you can even do video clips, which has a really high impressions and engagement rate over static posts. So you can pull key concepts or quotes from the article. Of course, you want to do a release post that's announcing that the article is up and inviting people to read it. And then, of course, like throwback posts a year down the line or 2 years down the line that showcase the article again. All of those things are considerations that you can make. And also thinking, again, about single static posts with a caption of interest, or carousel posts, which would be multiple posts that folks can slide through, or video as well as an option. And you'd spread this out 2 pieces of content over multiple months. That just draws further attention to the interview that you hosted with this expert. Making your content shareable is another lesser spoken channel of sorts. It's the human channel. And the expert is one of those where if you're creating content that's exciting to them and they're very proud of course, they're going to share it across social, across emails, and of course, like the website link itself. But you can also create interest among your audience for sharing with these posts. The pull quote is a really good example of making shareable content that anyone can value. I mean, the number of times on LinkedIn, I've seen a quote from someone that I maybe even hadn't heard of before that struck me. And so I shared it with my own insights around it. That amplifies the reach even more. So the value here of creating the human channel of inciting this desire to share is very valuable. And a quick note on shareability with SEO, the unique insights in your article, and Kate mentioned earlier, quoting something shows you can read. The higher quality your long form content article, the more likely it is that your product may be cited by someone else in their articles, right? Pulling a quote from yours, saying so-and-so said this, then you have that link that actually improves your SEO overall. We wanted to show some examples of a couple of recent interview articles that we've helped execute for a couple of B2B businesses. Now, what isn't shown here are we've also executed this tactic with mental health industry. We've also executed this tactic with medical for Spine, Colorado, and many other industries can benefit from this tactic. If you want to see a really good example of someone who has created a series and repeatedly uses this tactic, Startup Colorado, that we're all very familiar with, absolutely crushes it. And here you can see an announcement post for a new King Energy article and a quote post example. You can also see a full page on their website dedicated to the interview articles that they've had, titled The Future of Solar, which even further positions their focus on this tactic, and also that they are creating a platform for conversations in their space. And then over to Pearl Street, they leverage their newsletter very strongly because they have a large email list. So focusing on encouraging reads and interaction with the content through their newsletter is a huge part of their strategy, and really makes the newsletter a much more interesting piece for folks to read, where they can also pepper in other operational updates and promotional tidbits alongside the announcement of the article. So just some examples. The long form content piece has endless possibilities to turn into other kernels for your channels, wherever your audience lives. And a good rule of thumb is to think about 5 to 10 ways that you can leverage the piece to create more visibility and awareness.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this up and then opening the floor for questions. But I just want to pull your attention back to a few key points about this strategy and its impact in your marketing engine. So the first thing is, yes, visibility is really important, but it doesn't win you deals until you pair it with authority. So you need to have that trust, you need to have that buy-in, and that's what's going to help shorten that sales cycle and really propel your sales forward. One interview can equal multi-channel momentum. So you do this one interview and it can be spread across all your channels. It can be spread across your experts' channels. And that single conversation is going to create this engine that's going to help you really gain some momentum, both in that visibility and authority space, but also in terms of sales, in terms of getting in front of the audience you need, in terms of closing deals. And then if it's done right, this content's going to continue working for you for years and years and years. Like Kelsey mentioned, you can do throwback social posts and pull that article back to the forefront. Another opportunity, if information or the industry has changed dramatically, bring back the same expert, do a second interview, and get their perspective on how things have changed. It's a great way to bring that forward again and again and keep really capitalizing on the content that you created before. This is a huge topic. It's a big project. It does take some workshopping to be able to fulfill the full strategy. If you are interested in getting some help in workshopping that topic, same time next Tuesday, we are going to be doing a workshop. Kelsey just dropped a copy of the workbook for this whole project. You can download that workbook, bring that workbook with us over with you to the workshop, which is going to be next Tuesday, June 17th, the same time, 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll send you an invite for that workshop, but you just need to type in the chat here, workshop, and we'll add you to that invite. If you can't make that time, please let us know. Send us an email, send us a DM, whatever you need, and we'll make sure you get the information there. We're happy to help you. We are going to be having another webinar next month, July 15th at 11 a.m. or 1 p.m. Eastern. And so those are a couple of great ways to continue to learn from us, get some help on this particular tactic. The next webinar will be on a completely different topic. Check your emails. We'll have information about what that's going to be. One final way to interact with us before we jump into question and answers is to schedule what we call a growth session. A growth session is where we sit down with you and your key stakeholders for 90 minutes. It's an hour-and-a-half long conversation. During that conversation, we dive into your business goals, the outcomes you're trying to reach, what your marketing landscape looks like now. From that conversation, we build an acceleration plan, which outlines the top opportunities for your business in terms of branding, website marketing. That plan is something that you can absolutely take and execute yourself, but we, of course, would be more than willing to help you with that strategy and execution. We would, of course, deliver a proposal at that point. The growth session and acceleration plan usually costs $500. If you follow this link, it is $250. And you can book everything right there through that Calendly link. I'm going to leave this up on the screen so you guys have access to that as needed, but I'm going to open the floor to questions. If anybody wants to ask away, feel free to unmute yourself and we'll be here for the next 10 to 15 minutes to answer whatever questions you might have.
I can go first.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is amazing. By the way, I love this. We've been doing this for quite a while. We paused it for a while, but we're restarting it. I think it's a phenomenal way to scale a really large amount of content, which we sort of have needs for. Our struggle sometimes is getting the scheduling piece. Have you found that maybe even turning this into a network effect of like paying the expert so that they share your brand and are accountable for doing the things that they're getting paid for. And once they complete all those things, then you actually do a payout. A concept that we're thinking about is like outdoor guides, outdoor experts, and they can have a different way of even having additional revenue on the side by jumping on, doing the thing, and then like sharing it on their social media and actually doing their checklist of what they're accountable for to help get those brand mentions back. Because oftentimes the hardest part for us is to get the interviewer to share this back out with their audience. So I wanted to see if you have any tips around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely if you have the funds available and you want to pay someone for their time, that is certainly a way to get them to pay attention and make them feel that need to share. When we start an interview, we say up front that we want to do this, but we do require them to share the interview. Like we set the expectation that they're going to be sharing. We do provide them with assets to make that sharing easier. I don't know if you're doing that. That's something that we make sure we do. My biggest hesitation with paying someone to be an expert is if you lose some of the authenticity, then it feels a little bit more like an ad. They might feel like they need to say positive things about you. I don't know.
I actually have a slightly different perspective on that. I do think that there are certain industries and certain types of experts who would respond well to that. On the other hand, an article and a set of content of this quality, right, with this forethought and giving them a stage to share their expertise is actually, at least in the B2B space, is extremely high value to them. And that's something that typically they might pay for to have done and get that visibility and get that space and get that platform to share their story. So I think part of the challenge is like a value challenge, where are you positioning this as something that's extremely high value for them? Or are you positioning it as something that's very high value for you? Or is there a way for you to balance that to create the conversation more like, this is going to be more effective for you and your brand if you leverage the tools that we're going to give you to get the word out. And for us, it's going to be amazing regardless. So trying to kind of just foster that psychology, I think, is very valuable. That being said, again, like in certain industries, I know at the outdoors industry too, there's a lot of monetization of conversation. So it might be something that's harder to avoid in outdoors. But in B2B, we have never been tasked with that because people are so generally excited to have the opportunity and that piece of content that they get to share too.
Yeah, I think the piece, Kate, that we may have been missing is creating the content and make it so easy for them to share that all they have to do is copy paste and send it in. I think let's start there.
Or like give it to your assistant, like let your assistant post it. Here's everything they need to make this create dividends for you, you know? Yeah.
I mean, if they're investing the time in the conversation already, that's a big chunk of time. So you'd think they'd want to get value out of it for their brand.
Yeah, maybe getting it back to them as quickly as possible so they're excited about it. I think sometimes we've let it
keep that.
It's taken too long. Yeah.
Yeah, the dopamine cycle. So that was also when I talked about following up with your expert, kind of when you say when it's going to be published, and that generates a lot of excitement. It should be quite close to when you're publishing it. And then as soon as it publishes, you send another email with all of the announcement materials and like the ways that they can use it. And the social graphic includes even like a caption that's optimized for whatever channel they are using, right? If it's LinkedIn or Instagram or what have you. So then it's like kind of like a big launch announcement, like the piece is done, it's published, and here's everything you need to get the word out. And it just creates even more like dopamine for them. And I agree with you on keeping that momentum. And then the follow-up gift and thank you card can even seal that even further and remind them it's like, oh, I should really share that again. Or like, yeah, I didn't actually get around to the LinkedIn post. I'm going to do that right now. So there is like a nurturing aspect to the communications with them too. But start simple and then make it more complex as you get better at it. Sounds like you have a foundation, so you get to just level up a little bit. Yeah.
That's awesome. We have a question in the chat from Carlos. Carlos says, I have an expert I want to meet. They're hosting a charity event, and that's a way to maybe get some face time. How do I make the best of that opportunity?
I mean, I think any typical networking best practices are good for an in-person networking opportunity. But I actually think that inviting them to an expert interview article is a great way to potentially break the ice and demonstrate your seriousness and give them value right up front, right? It's like, hey, actually, I would really love to conduct an interview with you and create a long form article that positions your expertise and leadership in front of our audiences. Do you have an hour at some point where we could maybe do that? I mean, of course, like tying in with making sure that the conversation is going well and it feels right to suggest that or present that. But that, I think, for some folks, that would be a very interesting way to deepen a new relationship as well.
Yeah, and I'd say enter into that conversation just demonstrating that you know who you are or who they are and that they have value. Like I would come up at that as like, hey, I'm a really big fan of your work. I love your perspective on XYZ thing. I would love to get you on my interview series. Do you think you might have an hour sometime in the next couple of weeks? And then try to, if they're willing, book some time right there. If they're not, say, hey, I'll follow up with you about this next week. Do you have a business card I could take?
So what about like for these people doing research? Because most likely they got something out there, I guess. Any tips on researching the person before you meet them?
That's in the workbook as well, actually. I've got a whole list of things to make sure you take a look at and look for before you start crafting your interview questions. You kind of want your questions to be driven by some of the information that's already out there so you know what's missing, what hasn't already been covered, or what has been covered but you could do in a different angle that would create a new set of interest.
Cool. So that'd be useful even before you meet them. I like it.
100%.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that actually, this is a great question that you've brought up, Carlos, that we didn't really address is if you don't know the expert at all, how to get in front of them to even invite them to an expert interview. Primarily with our clients, we start by shaking the trees of who you know and who is within your circle already, right? And many of our clients are already part of maybe a venture capital portfolio. So they may pull other founders in that portfolio to interview that are in different spaces, but they have this commonality of like, we're a growth stage organization that is making waves in the area that we're making waves, right? So it is, I think, probably easier to start with experts in your circle than experts that you want to be part of your circle. But it is a fun, I think, possible tactic of using the expert interview to meet experts you want to talk to.
Wonderful. Well, if we have one more question, we can take that, but it seems like we are just about to wrap up here. Is there any last questions we can answer before we send you all on your way?
I just have a comment. If nobody has a question, is SEO keyword research you guys mentioned was super helpful. So I look for all questions that a user might have, like the end customer, and try to make a list of all those questions and use those for interview. And then like that's natural, long tail keywords that we can use for
yeah. One tactic for the article itself that we've seen create success in AI overview, and people also ask, and like featured snippets, is at the end of the article, creating a section that has key takeaways that kind of speak to some of those main questions and themes in like a summary format at the end of the story-driven, more refined piece, right? But then that's something that the search engines can crawl and pull and display. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate your time. Please take some time to download that workbook. That'll really help you get through this. If anybody would like to come to that workshop, feel free to dump the word workshop in that chat. We'll send invites to that as well. Again, that'll be next week, same time. And we're just so grateful for all of you joining us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.